I'd love just to hear about your role at Amazon as a recruiter, but also kind of, what's your area of focus, the business unit you're associated with, et cetera.
Yes, of course. Well, I'm here at Amazon since April last year, so 1 year and 4 months now. And I work here in recruiting, supporting the recruiting activities for Prime Video and studios across Latin America. So I'm based in Brazil. Me personally, I'm in Rio, where our Amazon Studios teams is it's also based. And we have our Prime Video structure based in São Paulo, which is another state here in Brazil. And mainly we hire for Brazil, Mexico, Costa Rica, and we are beginning our recruiting activities for Argentina as well. So I focus on the entertainment side. So this is pretty much what I've been doing since I joined Amazon. And, with this role, in addition to actually work managing all the recruiting processes, we also have responsibilities in like educating all the interviewers and getting them prepared for actually interviewing on behalf of Amazon. So we have some steps to take here, and also maintain a good networking with people from the businesses that we support. So for that, social media and other different groups here are pretty important for achieving this.
Cool. Tell me, so for a long time, Brazil has always stood out as a very social media first population, like many years ago with like, I think it was like Picasa and like early social media sites. Like, tell me about like social media in Brazil, social media in Latin America. Like, how is it different? How much is it used? How much is it a part of daily life? And maybe even comparing that to how we use it here in the States or other areas.
Yeah. Actually, it depends a lot on what business and what niche you are supporting. At least talking about the entertainment perspective, here in Brazil, we are very active in social media, especially Instagram, Twitter. These are some tools that we use a lot here. And people are always sharing content, and people that are actually huge fans of the content that we produce and we share in Prime Video are very active in those social networks that I mentioned. So these are the main ones here, but surprisingly, to reach to some specific groups, like when I'm focusing on bringing more women to our recruiting processes, we have some very specific groups that we can reach out easily on Facebook. So
Mm,
for some specific niche like women in entertainment industry, I know that on Facebook I can achieve like this specific part of the group. But to discuss content and to talk about what's going on here, I guess like Twitter and Instagram and pretty much the main networks that we use here in Brazil. And LinkedIn is also a great tool in terms of recruiting. I actually got surprised because before Amazon, I used to recruit for other businesses, completely different markets like oil and gas and engineering,
mm,
and I wasn't expecting to find so many people from the entertainment industry active on LinkedIn, but it is happening. So I guess it's still growing. It's still a market that has very like close connections. So sometimes we got lots of referrals from people that worked together like previously in like projects or something, but still we have like a broader perspective if we go to LinkedIn, especially for some more general roles like marketing and this kind of role. We have a good appeal in LinkedIn as well. So I guess it depends on what focus you'd like to cover. But these are the main networks that we use here, at least in a Brazil perspective. I see that in Costa Rica we do lots of job postings and advertisements on Facebook. So this is a network that they use like heavily. So when we have any difficulties on attracting people from our job postings on LinkedIn, which sometimes
Mm,
happens in Costa Rica,
hmm.
we go to Facebook and this community that we can find there, and we can actually get better results. So it depends a lot.
What I mean, you kind of just described it, but as someone in a recruiting role, why is social media important, right? I mean, you have a number of different ways to reach people and to connect with them, but I mean, you kind of just described this, but maybe just for you personally, right? I mean, at some level, it's kind of each of our own decision to kind of how much we're going to invest in, leveraging our building our own network and social profile. Why is social important to you? When did you kind of decide that it was something that you needed to invest in, professionally for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. In a recruiting perspective, I guess the social network that I mostly use in my daily basis is LinkedIn. And
Hmm.
as a recruiter, is completely like it's part of my day. I use this like heavily, and I feel that I can reach out to people in an easier way through the social aspect. Like people can get in touch with me easily. They can see who I am. They can see what I'm doing. They can see where I work. They can see that like I'm real. And once I share more content, like on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, it kind of gives them like more confidence that I'm actually taking it like seriously, that I'm actually committed with providing content and high quality. So these are more specific aspect that I think that social network as LinkedIn can provide to candidates. But also, it's easy to me to approach to a wider population through this network. So I can access more people. I can access people from different locations without even like leaving my home. So it's kind of a practical and easy tool to achieve more people in an easy way. So once I share more content, I guess people feel like closer to me. People like feel closer to the company that I'm working on, and of course, it's an easier way to like sourcing, like to search for more people in a practical way. So I guess all of these aspects combined makes me use like LinkedIn a lot as I'm using. So especially sharing specific content related to recruiting, related to interviewing, I feel that it engages more people, that people like feel that they're receiving recommendations in an easy
Hmm.
way, like in a fast way, especially here at Amazon, because our recruiting process is very specific. Our recruiting process can be tough, so it's always good to receive some recommendation from someone that actually works there. So I guess people feel like closer to me when I'm sharing.
Did you, in your prior roles at other companies, were you ever at a point in your career where you were involved with recruiting where you weren't using social or social wasn't really a priority at those companies?
Yes, yes. I worked in a company, in a consulting company, and I was supporting like very operational roles from like an industry from mining, and these were like very operational roles where the easier way that I could find them was like calling directly to the companies to reach out to them, basically. And they worked like in shifts, so they weren't active on social media at that time.
Mm,
It was like 2015 or something. So
hmm.
they weren't actually active in social media, but it was a very specific group. It was a very specific team that I was trying to assess. And at that point, I needed to hire all the employees from a new, and it was a new company here in Rio, like a production line. So these were more senior people from a different background. Usually lived in very remote regions with no much access. So they pretty much lived near to work, and their lives were based on this. So it's a very specific niche. But for all the other roles, for all the other the other activities that I developed in recruiting, social media was actually pretty useful.
What in your current role? I mean, obviously, Amazon is uh, an amazing company, and you're hiring for people that are probably as sophisticated as any in terms of like their own use of social and familiarity with it. Um, of the various things that, tools that you have or kind of ways in which you can engage and connect with people, where does social rank kind of amongst those?
Well, actually, as you mentioned, like Amazon is a great company. So, for the roles that I'm currently working on, usually we get good applications from our job postings, like from our
Mm-hmm.
website. So when I'm going to source for profiles in our own database, we usually get to some actually interesting people. So I would say that, if I cannot find someone from these source that I go initially, like social network is like the right after. So
Mm,
I'll go there to source my candidates like as a second option. Sometimes even the first, because I do in parallel with our own database, but I try to prioritize people who actively apply to our roles, who are actively interested. So social media is kind of one of the top tools that I use to actually source candidates, and the number one for attracting them, because we depend on it to advertise our job postings. So we depend on it. We rely on this to everything. And we sometimes we also conduct like live streaming events with people from our teams as well. So we always use like social network to attract those people as well. So the last one, I was actually one of the mediators on the live streaming, and I used LinkedIn to actively source people to invite to come to our event. And initially we were expecting like 100 people or something, and we ended up with more than 300 at the time,
mm.
because it was kind of organic. People sent to each other, and it was a great way to start. Of course, we can achieve way more than this, but we have just like mainly a week to invite people. So it was a very good result, from what we were expecting, and comparing with other events and other live streaming events that we conduct here. So we know that the power of social media for us to actually invite people actively, and make them share between themselves, like in their own networks, was something that actually drove this. So it's one of the main tools that I use. So if not the first one, right, the second one, depending on the role.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point because we have another client who I spoke with, one of their lead recruiters recently, and it's a much smaller company. It's not a company that you would know the name. It's a very successful company and growing. I think they only have about 1,000 employees. and they've been a client for a number of years, and their recruiting group uses social, just as you do, very heavily. And but it was interesting, your comment of, well, kind of everyone knows who Amazon is, and there's obviously a level of attraction there for people to want to explore what openings are available, and fill out those recs. For him, he said, one of the reasons why he uses social so heavily is because they are more of an obscure company. 80% of the people that he talks to, that he approaches and even gets a conversation with, don't even know who the company is. And so he has to spend time, helping to kind of educate them. But I imagine that's probably less of a problem for you.
Yes, yes. Usually people knows the brand. They still don't know many details from the streaming side, the
Yes.
entertainment side. It's something new here in Brazil. No, the brand itself has like 2 years, and Amazon in Brazil is of course smaller than in other countries, but still it's a very strong brand, and it kind of helps us to make people aware of what we are doing in terms of entertainment as well, and like position us as a strong arm in Amazon Brazil. So it kind of helps us as well.
Let me ask just one question specific to Brazil. When you're sharing content, how much are you sharing in English versus how much are you sharing in Portuguese or Spanish, and how important is that?
Yeah, this is an amazing question because when you actually anticipated some of your questions, and I'm seeing here like if we could improve something,
Mm,
it was like the top one that came up to me. I miss some local content there because here in Brazil we value a lot like local content. Our originals here in Brazil are giving us like much success, and there are some people here that are not English native speakers. They have
hmm
some difficulties on accessing English content. It's not like the target the target public that we focus on our roles needs to speak, because here's kind of a global company, and for some
Yes.
senior roles you have to be able to communicate. But it's not like this for all orgs at Amazon, because we have our CDs, we have other orgs, we also have more junior roles here that does not require a fluent level. So I struggle to access those people with the content that we have available to share. So it kind of works for most of people, but I feel we leave some people behind. And if we have the chance to share a more local content, like Brazilian content or Spanish speaking as well for some other regions, I feel that people will actually feel even more closer to us, even more
hmm
valuable, because it actually makes a difference for us. Because pretty much the like almost 100% of the content that I share is in English. But in terms of job descriptions, for instance, I'm trying to share as much as possible in both languages, like in English and in Portuguese. I started this like this month. Our head of studios here in Brazil, when she posts in LinkedIn, she always try to also post like the version in Portuguese and in English. So we are actually trying our best to achieve all population here as much as possible. So yeah, I do miss, and it's really important for us to have this.
Yeah, that's something that we're thinking about. We're thinking about kind of two different things. One is, how do we ensure that kind of all the content that's already in there, is perhaps translated in Portuguese or any other language, because we have users across, I think, 100 countries or something right now. And then the other is, finding a way for you or anyone else to actually pull in more localized content, right? Stuff that's specific to your area, your city, your country, things that, because I think one of the things that we found in the past is, and it's just as you're saying, even if someone speaks English, sharing something in your shared native language is, very likely more of a way to establish a connection with them. So that's great to hear. One of my other questions, how can leaders best support their teams to use social? I mean, obviously things are pretty great at Amazon, and you're obviously doing an exceptional job. But what have you seen, kind of good or bad, or what do you think is important from kind of a leadership level to prioritize the use of social for a recruiting organization?
Yeah, this is also a good question because I actually don't see many leaders like near to me using social media
Hmm.
in a frequent way or in an effective way. So I feel that they don't actually know how to use this in behalf of them in like taking advantage of this. So I feel that maybe any kind of guidance, specific guidance or training could be shared with them so that they can use in a best way. Because of course, like everyone's social is kind of a practical tool that they can access and share content, but still it's not only about it. It's not only using everyone's social. So they need to establish like a connection where they're with the people that are there on the network. And for that, I guess one of the leaders that we have that use this in a best way is our head of studios leader here in Brazil, because she's always sharing also some facts and events and conferences and actually uh, good information and curiosities from our daily basis here at work. So sharing this kind of content makes us really more attractive. So we can see how people treat each other here in Brazil. Our Amazon Studios team is like really close to each other. So there you can see a little bit more on our daily basis and how we act and how we treat ourselves. So it's a good way to establish a connection. And I don't feel that the other leaders are like confident enough to actually do the same or doing their own way, respecting, of course, all the compliance that we have in our postings, all the things that we need to pay attention to, uh, not share something that is kind of inappropriate, or the way we treat our connections, if they reply, if they send us some any kind of message. So I don't think that they feel they have all the knowledge and the tools that they need to use professionally in an effective way. So that's what I feel. And maybe this is one of the reasons that they don't use much. So I don't see many leaders like using like everyone's social directly or even sharing other type of content in their networks. I see some, of course, but I guess it could be much more used than what it is.
Yeah, no, you're 100. That, yeah. I'm curious, what is the name of the head of studios in Brazil?
It's Malu Miranda.
How
I
would you
can
spell
share.
that? Yeah,
Yeah,
if you would.
I
Thank
can
you.
type it for you.
Yeah, it's you're spot on. I mean, I think thank you. One of the main things that we see in terms of the programs that we work with, the most successful ones have kind of the highest level of executive participation.
Yeah,
Because I think to your point, the executives kind of they present they kind of give permission to everyone else to do the same, right? If you see them on there and it sounds like this head of studios is doing a great job, and I imagine it probably has an effect on you and other members of your team to know that like you're also doing things that are clearly a priority, for this head of the studio. we're fortunate to have some clients where the CEO is, a huge participant. Even at some large companies in the past, like T-Mobile, they had an extremely social CEO here in the United States who had his own YouTube series about cooking and all sorts of funny things. But it really just it gave a green light to everyone in the company that this is a priority, and for them to feel like they could express themselves and be creative without too many restrictions and so forth. But that's a fantastic point. Yeah, I just really appreciate you taking time, Fernanda. It was really nice to connect, and would love to keep in touch as we go along.
Yes, yes, of course. It was a pleasure. Of course, of course. We can keep in touch.
Great. Well, it's nice
Nice
to meet
meeting
you. Thanks again for making time.
you. Of course. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Social at Scale podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please be sure to subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, please let me know. You can access past episodes on our site at everyonesocial.com/podcast. As always, please feel free to connect with me directly on Twitter or LinkedIn, and look forward to seeing you next time.